Welcome to the Lab Report, a new series produced by Cincinnati Lab Theater. Each episode, we will be exploring different topics regarding theater, featuring lab company members and special guest artists. Enjoy. Welcome to episode 1 of the Lab Report, a process and exploration. I'm your host, Tori Pate. In this episode, we will focus on how and why our theater company was created and the collaborative process of developing new plays with playwrights, directors, and actors. So let me introduce the panelists for this episode. Elizabeth Harris, Executive Director and Co-Artistic Director. Bob Allen, who is one of our co-artistic directors. Brian Behrens, another co-artistic director. Charlie Schulman, who was a playwright for one of the 2019 new works, a staged production called A Funny Play for Troubled Times. And Jazz McMullen, our newest lab company member, and he has been an actor in several Lab New Works productions. So welcome, everyone. We're going to just jump right on in here. Artistic directors, what is Lab Theater?
Cincinnati Lab Theater, sorry. Cincinnati Lab Theater is a theater focused on developing new works. That's what we do. And we do it through a process in which we bring the playwright, the actors, and the director all together at the same time to work on the play, to talk it out, to talk about what works, what doesn't work, to give the playwright time to make revisions. And then we move into a rehearsal process where we put it up on its feet, and at that time, still have time for revisions. And then we actually do a stage performance, with lights and sound and costumes and props and an audience. And we do several productions, several shows, and we have a talk back afterwards because the audience feedback is really, really important to the playwright. So that's what we do. That's Cincinnati Lab Theater.
Yeah. Bob and Brian, did you want to add anything to that?
Go, Brian, go.
I think what we provide is a service to playwrights that is nurturing and free from judgment, and it enables them to take something that they are working very hard on. It's probably one of the hardest things to do, in my opinion, and to actually see it done live. It's a live medium, and that's the way it should be viewed. And it gives playwrights the opportunity to see the fruits of their labor.
The word I use to describe what we do more than anything, though, is development. We are a developmental theater company. We're giving the playwright the space, the place, the personnel, and the input to develop their work. And that we, Elizabeth says this all the time, we are playwright-centric. And that, I think that's a very important thing to say about what we do. So the playwright gets input from actors and from directors, and the final voice is the audience that comes to see the production when we put it on its feet. They get to talk to the playwright gets to talk to them. And that is a very, very important part of the process, I think.
What inspired you to start Lab Theater?
Whiskey.
I blame it all on Bob. It's all his fault. He did it.
Yeah, I confess.
Bob wanted to, his idea was, you know what, we just want to do good theater, and we want to do theater that develops artists. And so from that idea, and I think I said this before, we were, sitting around the table drinking lots of whiskey and eating lots of M&Ms. We came up with the idea of Lab, and our first our first production was a play that I had written called Buckeye. It's now called Daughter of War. And that's how we developed the process. I was straight out of grad school at the time for playwriting. So, I had all of this in my brain anyway. And so that's where it came from. And then from there, our next season was about, we had taken 3 playwrights and given them an idea, and they wrote a short play. And so then the next season was when we started our New Works Festival. So that's kind of how it developed and took off. And we discovered that that's really, really kind of where the heart of it was the development of new works. Bob, go ahead. I'm sorry, jump in.
Another actor director and I were having a discussion at one point about how we were, we've done hundreds and hundreds of performances and plays and so forth, but we felt like we wanted to do more. We wanted to give back to our profession, to the art form somehow, and that was the seed that started the conversation. And once we started talking about how can we do that, I knew Elizabeth was in her a master's program, and I knew it was about playwriting, and so I talked with her, and then I said, hey, you really need to come talk with us. And that conversation led to one thing, and we said, well, what can we do? Elizabeth's play was ready, really ready to be produced, and so we did. So we said, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to develop plays. We didn't know exactly what the process was going to be, but during the process of doing Daughter of War, then called Buckeye, Brian will back me up on this. It's like every day we would show up and we would get a new page, and then a scene that we were working on and had memorized would be cut, and we'd get a whole new scene. But it established the process. It gave us the solid, firm ground upon which to build what we realized we really wanted to do. Give a playwright a place to work and to listen to input from actors and to see it get up and move. So that's all part of this whole the whole development to get us to where we are today. And I taught Elizabeth everything I know about suckering people in, and she suckered Brian in.
I did. On that very first play, I did. And now look at him. Here he is.
Well, and then you both suckered me into being a part of Lab too. So, Jazz, I'm going to jump to you. What has been, as a performer, what's it like to work through this process of a new work, of something that no one has ever put on its feet before? What is it like as a performer? And secondly, what do you find to be the most rewarding part of this new works process?
So the coming into it and knowing that I am the first person, knowing that I am originating these roles, that that I've gotten to play is exhilarating. Knowing that, and it sounds a bit egotistical in my head as I was getting ready to say it, but knowing that everyone that does it afterwards will, likely draw some inspiration to what I initially brought to it. I think that's part of the fun of doing a new works piece is, having that, that initial insight and developing that character. That's one of the exciting parts of doing a new work with Lab. And then from there, getting the opportunity to pick the brain of the playwright and ask questions and find out, what is the motivation behind this that you were going for, as opposed to what's my, sole interpretation. Having access to the playwright right there, on hand it's awesome. It's not something that's often available. And so that's another of my favorite parts. But my absolute favorite part of working with Lab is the talkbacks at the end. Um, being able to sit with the audience after the curtain has come down and get instant feedback from them, and be able to talk about what they liked, what worked for them, what struck them, those different things that the audience can relate back to us right then and there is it's rewarding, and it's so helpful. And then it also tends to go on after, after the talkbacks have ended there in the theater, at the bar, 20 minutes later, or around the dinner table afterwards. Just having those opportunities is so rewarding, and it builds a sense of community, as well as just, I don't know. It's an awesome thing. It's an awesome tool to have at your disposal. That's part of the Lab process, and it's not something that you get with every performance that you do outside of Lab. And so it's one of the reasons that I keep coming back to Lab, because I love it.
Charlie, could you speak for a moment about your experience as a playwright with this process that we do with Lab Theater?
Well, it really is an invaluable experience because you're in a supportive environment where there's no pressure, and you're working with a lot of talented young actors and director and the artistic directors, and it gives you an opportunity to see what is working with the play and what is not working with the play in front of a live audience in the full production, not just a staged reading. There's a theater culture of staged readings that every theater does, and they're helpful, but they're not productions, and you don't really get the full effect of what you've written. And so as playwrights, we write our plays, we're alone, we're isolated, and I don't think that people realize that we don't really see the play for the first time until we see it for the first time, like the audience sees it. But often is the case, unfortunately. I mean, I think most plays don't get productions. Some just have readings, and then plays that do have productions usually only get, I think the vast majority of them only get one production. So to have it be, a lot of times you have a play and you go, oh, some of that's great and some of it's a mess, and that's it, because the play gets reviewed and it's done. Then it gets published, and then you can make some changes here or there, or it doesn't get published, and that's the end of it. But with this experience, it's a pure experience, and it's a very rare experience in the theater. And I've had a lot of development experiences, but none quite like this, because of the actual amount of time and attention that is given to each play. And, so yeah, you learn a lot from what doesn't work, but you also learn from what works, and that is inspires you, gives you confidence, and then you can, you talk to the actors, talk to the director, talk to audience members, and it helps you kind of propel you forward, because that's what we're always looking for, something that will make us want to help us fix the play, make the play better, realize the play, fully realize the play. That's what we're going for. And I think what some people don't really understand is that is a process, and sometimes it's a longish process, and a lot of plays don't really get to have the full experience, so that it can be its fully arrived in a realized play.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the process. How does this work? How do we choose plays? How do we decide which ones are the ones that we are going to produce for a New Works Festival? And then once we have chosen those plays, what is the process from the first read-through to closing night?
So when we're choosing plays, so for the New Works Festival right now, the way it's structured, and actually COVID messed us up because we were getting ready to expand our New Works Festival to include more plays. But in the past, what we have done is that we have selected 2 plays to do an actual production for, and then 2 to do a staged reading for. The ones that we choose to do a production for, they have to have had at least 1 staged reading. And then the ones that we do stage reading for, they don't have to have had any sort of production history whatsoever. We're looking for plays that are plays that we can help develop. If it's something that's like ready to go on somewhere else and be published and have a month run somewhere, that's not our plays. Our plays are the ones that we want that are in good shape, but they're ready for that next step. The ones that we do, that we produce, you can tell it's time for it to get up on its feet, because when you get a piece up on its feet, like Charlie said, then you actually see it. There's so many things that you don't get to see when it's just a staged reading. So that part is invaluable to a playwright. So once we start the process, we pair the playwright up with a director, and they have some pre-talks about, what does this mean? And what's your intention here? And this is what I got here. And, they have some back and forth. The playwright might go ahead and do some revisions before they even meet with the actors. Mm-hmm. And then the actors and the playwright and the director all work together. We want the playwright present for these rehearsals.
We talk a little bit about the talkbacks at the end. Why do we do those?
So one of the things that we use the Liz Lerman critical response for artistic works. We use that format. And part of that format is, we use it in the rehearsal process, the development process, but we also use it with the audience as well. So we want to hear from them the things that struck them, that stayed with them, that moved them, that they thought were provocative or interesting. We want to hear from them questions that they have, but then we want to give the playwright an opportunity to ask the audience questions. It's super valuable for the playwright to do that, because we've spent all these weeks in this rehearsal hall trying to develop this thing and hash it out and work together, and we need to know how is it hitting the audience. One of the things you can do as a playwright, you can sit in the house and watch the audience and watch their response, but sometimes you don't see everything. So hearing from them is huge.
Picking up on that is when we produced a play that Elizabeth wrote 3 or 4 years ago called Judas. One of the very interesting things that happened in the talkback with the audience, I thought was really, really interesting, because a lot of people in the audience had this same feeling. It was a 2-character piece, and they talked a lot about a 3rd character. And the audience afterwards was like, maybe this should be a 3-character piece, and we should see some scenes with that person they keep talking about, because the dialogue you've written makes that person seem so important. And that, to me, really cinched the value of the audience talkback.
Jazz, as an actor, I know you said you really enjoy the talkbacks. How are they helpful for you as a performer?
You can see what works. I'll take, for instance, when I when I did a funny play last year, I played a drag queen at the top of the show, and within 90 seconds,
yeah,
90 seconds had to go from full high horror drag to a bear.
That was a quick change.
It was. It
Yeah.
was. But
And it was
such-
impressive.
Thank you. Thank you. But that was such a fun experience, and having the audience there, you know, afterwards saying, "What? How did you do that? How were you able to do that?" Just, you know, sort of the behind the scenes questions that the audience gets to ask, and being able to talk about some of those, being able to share your experiences with an audience after the curtain goes down is what I think is therapeutic, so to speak. It's not something that always gets to happen aside from at the stage door as you're trying to, you know, get home after a show. And I think that that sort of community aspect of the talkbacks that you get with the audience afterwards, it's an invaluable piece just to find out what they are feeling. If what you were trying to convey to them, you know, worked from an audience standpoint to the actors, you know, as Liz was saying earlier, you can't do a show without the actors and a director. And while this process is playwright centric, it's also a learning experience for the actors involved as well. And I think that's it's something that we don't get that often. And the talkbacks, you know, aside from when you do a school show and you get the kid in the third row that goes, "How did Peter Pan fly?" I like these in-depth conversations that we get to have with our audiences afterwards.
When we did, just to jump in, when we did Valletta Anderson's piece, Medusa, we did a stage reading of that, and then we did a production of it. And one of the things that was really exciting about that, Jazz was in that piece as well. One of the things that was exciting about that is not only did we start to talk about the work, but we talked about things that, you know, are actually really important in our society, and that how art and theater can bring us together to have hard conversations that are actually important conversations and really good conversations to have. So I think that's another thing that having these talkbacks provides for the artist, but for the playwright, but for the artist in general, but also the audience.
Yeah, I'll tag on that just to say that, yes, sometimes some of the productions strike a chord with the audience that makes it relevant beyond the story, and it becomes a conversation about the play and a conversation about issues that the play has exposed. And that, as Elizabeth said, that's amazing. That's really great.
So Charlie, I'm going to ask you, how do you feel your work has grown after being a part of the lab process?
Well, I think I have a greater appreciation for revision during the rehearsal process, and how that is really like the second step of writing a play. Of course, I rewrote the play after we had the workshop experience. But since then I've written a couple of other plays, and I'm kind of chasing that lab experience in a way by trying to, you know, recreate certain kinds of environments where I can work with actors, where they can, you know, maybe do improvs, where they can, you know, read scenes. And it's not the whole play, and it's not a production, but it's a way to kind of, you know, to inspire me, to get feedback. To have people, you know, why are they doing this? Why are they saying this? Or what have you considered that? Just having that back and forth with other theater professionals is something that I try to make part of my general process now. And you have to be very creative and resourceful to, you know, well, you have to be creative and resourceful to run a theater company, and you have to be creative and resourceful to be, you know, any kind of person in the theater. But as a playwright, trying to develop my plays, I'm looking to actors and directors and dramaturgs to collaborate with me once I get it to a certain point. So I think that that's been part of my development as a playwright that Lab has contributed to.
So as a playwright, I'm assuming that you have worked with other New Works festivals and things like that. How are we different from other companies that produce New Works?
Well, it's very fundamental. I mean, it's a unique experience of what the difference is. I've worked with very established development organizations like the National Playwrights Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, and they're a wonderful organization. What they do is it's less amount of time working on the play, and then they have stage readings of the play, and it's, you know, it's an opportunity to get people to come see your play. So it's high pressure. Those experiences, it's high pressure. It's make or break. Theaters come to check you out, and if your play is developed enough, if it's, you know, if it's at the right point where people can see it for what its full value is, that could be a really good experience. Sometimes I think that plays are not at that stage yet, and they get seen right before they make that leap into, you know, going from, you know, it doesn't work until it works, you know, it kind of sucks until it's great. And so with Lab, I don't know why any playwright wouldn't want to be in the lab situation, work on their play in that kind of environment where there's no pressure and it's all playwright centric. I mean, it's like a dream come true. And I'm not just saying that, it's actually true. Because, you know, otherwise, like I write plays and I've produced off-Broadway musicals, and I've raised money, and I've had workshop situations, and they're very expensive and stressful, you know, and they're worthwhile sometimes, you know, but this is like purely about the art form. And hey, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that what we all think that we're signing up for when we want to be artists? And we often find out that we haven't signed up for that at all. So you know, it's a great reaffirming experience.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think we have just about covered everything and anything that we could think of this evening. Is there anything that any of you would like to add before we call it quits tonight?
Brian, you said something, I just want to get this. I want people to hear this. You said something very specific about working on as an actor in the process, about the freedom it provides an actor. Yeah. Would you talk about that?
As an actor, you get very rarely, I mean, you get to take chances and you get to explore. That's kind of a normal thing, but you don't always get to explore so freely and in a way that may influence the play. When the playwright is still developing who the characters are, to have someone that is free to make choices and maybe take things in a direction the playwright wasn't even thinking, that's a lot of fun. That collaborative part is very rewarding.
Well, tagging on to that, because I've performed in a couple of our productions as well. Brian's absolutely right. It's that moment when, as an actor, you take a risk, you make a bold choice, and the playwright goes, "Oh, I like that," and they somehow rewrite the scene a little bit to make sure that that is apparent to the next actor who takes on the role. And that's really rewarding as an actor, because then you feel truly contributory to the process. Yeah. Tori, you asked something earlier about what. There was the question that I asked you, like, what was the question again? But it was about what has been a big deal for you, or something like that. To the creative person.
Yeah, it was what was the most rewarding part of the process?
Anyone want to pick up on that?
Well, for me, as a playwright, having that nurturing experience, but also working with really great people who trust you. I talked about Judas before, and Brian was in that, and so was Derek Snow, and you know, they trusted me. Some of it was crazy. Like I said, I like words. You guys know how much I like words.
Oh yeah.
The sound of them. I like how they come out of your mouth. I like how they work together. Words are amazing. But sometimes I get lost in them. I really do. That's one of my weaknesses. What's one of my strengths, but one of my weaknesses. And so being able to trust Brian and Derek to say, Elizabeth, this is a little too much. Let's pull it back. Or for them to trust me to walk away and say, okay, what do I need to get rid of? You know, that really is a very rewarding part of the process for me, is this trust that we build, this nurturing that we build, this non-judgment that we build. And it's just about creating.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that positive vibe shows up on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's not just a touchy-feely, good-feeling thing. It's much more. It actually contributes to the work.
I will say that for me, the great reward has been our growth pattern. When we started with 3 people sitting in a room and saying what are we going to do and how are we going to do it, and starting with 1 play, and now reaching a point where we have more than 250 submissions. We've taken a play that we produced here to Scotland, to the Edinburgh French Festival. When we started this, I couldn't even have imagined that we were going to be going that far. And now I'm like, what's next? Let's go to China. I don't know. But yeah, for me, that's the great reward. I mean, sure, I love the process. I love being a director in the process. I love being an actor in the process. But just seeing, wow, where we've been and where we are, and knowing, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mommies and daddies, where we are going.
All right, so I think that's all we have for this evening. So what do we have coming up, just as like a little preview?
So coming up, we have a new staged reading on October the 16th and 17th. You can check out our webpage and our Facebook page, and of course all the social media for how to get tickets. Those are not on sale yet, but they will be. And it's going to be a Zoom reading. Jeff Miller, one of our newest lab members, is directing. It's a play called Dog, written by Brian Walker. And it's a funny little piece. It's a little quirky. It's going to be fun. I encourage everybody to check it out. It's going to be at 7 o'clock on the 16th and the 17th of October.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in to episode 1 of the Lab Report. And we hope to see you for episode 2. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.